as you can, because speaking of Steve Harris and bass awesomeness, we have Jon on next.
Killer. I'll be quiet.
Hey, Jon, welcome.
How's it going, man?
How are you?
Good to be here.
Great.
I'm good. I'm hiding out in North San Diego County from the madness of Los Angeles the past year, and just been basically in my studio writing and recording, and just waiting for normalcy to return so we can go back into the energy of playing live. And that's it, man. Everything revolves around music for me.
Yeah, so I checked out the I think you said kind of like a COVID collab jam with Mark Boals. So do you want to talk about that? Tell the guys.
Mark, I always liked the Trilogy album from Yngwie. Back when I was a kid, that was one of the albums I used to just think was the greatest thing in the world. And it was just that combo of Yngwie in his prime with songs and singing, that a lot of ways that album just kind of stood out to me as being just a little more awesome. I don't know. I always liked it. And so it was funny. We're always kind of at a crossroads, with the singers due to multiple reasons. And the fact that we happen to pick a genre that's the hardest to sing of any kind of limits our options. Right. Mm-hmm. One of my guitar players, Will Wallner, knows Mark a little bit. He'd met him over in Vegas. And, he said, Mark Boals is kind of looking to do some stuff. And I said, well, which Yngwie singer was it? I thought it would be one later one. Because I'd never known. I probably knew Mark's name back in the day when I was into Trilogy, but, it escapes you, because it's an Yngwie record. And he says, the guy from Trilogy. And I said, well, shit. I mean, I love his voice, And so we got on the phone, and I'd had a song written for a bit that I thought would fit his voice well. I write the vocal melodies, and I kind of can tell, like when I hear a singer, if something might, just right fit in his box. And it did. I sent Mark the vocal melodies, and he just laid it all down in his home studio. We all tracked it on our own. My drummer had to do it in his bedroom. So, the drums aren't nearly as big as I would like. I had to compensate with some stuff. And it's by no means an album quality song, but I think for just being something we recorded in our bedrooms on the fly, it turned out pretty cool. And it was fun to do, and something to keep us busy, right, while we're planning and plotting bigger and better things. I've got an album written. We're going to do a couple of covers. We just didn't covers. So ironic, tracked Flight of Icarus from Peace of Mind. The first time I met that guy, Mike Murphy, up there at Hanna Boys Center, when he gave me the Hanna Boys Center tour, all right, before I actually was a student. Your parents bring you, and there's a student in Hanna's that'll give you the walk around, hey, and Mike was kind of the mature kid on the campus at what was he, 12 years old. So he got that job. So there I am, my little, short little, innocent 12-year-old self. And there's Murphy. He walks up to me in an Iron Maiden Peace of Mind shirt and gave me my tour of Hanna's. So just funny that we're doing this cover from Peace of Mind and we're releasing it in a couple of days. And there's the first time I ever saw a guy in a Peace of Mind shirt was Mike Murphy. So there you go.
I love it.
And then probably about a year later, we started the band at Hanna Boys Center, and Leon was the lead singer. You want to talk about your theatrical kicking the chair off into the audience movement?
Yeah, that was great. See, Hanna Boys Center, if anyone who doesn't know, it's a Catholic all-boys school. It's been around since the 50s. Lots of nuns and probably a little bit more lax than would have been back in the day, but still then it was, it was a little rigid, and the old school nuns kind of had the, they didn't hit you or anything, but you still had that, don't mess around thing, especially Sister Peter. She was no joke. So we plotted this thing. The nuns would normally kind of sit in the front row to the left during twice a year. Hanna Boys Center in spring and winter would have the concerts. Now these were normally orchestral kinds of things, right?
And
like
a choir.
Yeah, and a choir. So it was that kind of proper, stuff parents go, oh, this is nice. there's not normally a loud rock band at these things, and we were the first ever and probably only to do that at this place.
We were.
And we basically set to we had a 4-piece group. We had a guy named Joe Rodoni who was playing drums, and Mike played bass. A guy named Ricky Sandoval, who is since passed. I think, Mike, your cousin, correct?
Yep. He passed away about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, Ricky, who really was instrumental with me. You know, him and I had sat in the room for we were the ones that started it together. I remember you, me, and Ricky sitting in that little back room in Loretto Cottage and putting this whole thing together. And
all our songs were original, mind you.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask if it was a cover or your own song.
We were original band. All our songs were original.
Original. I mean,
Wow.
You know, it's fun, and so we did this show with Joe Rodoni. I think it was the winter concert thing, some kind of thing, like a few months before that. But it was still kind of in its progression, and that's when Peter Flynn got involved. A new teacher came, a new counselor came on board that was a big rock and roll, Bob Dylan kind of hippy dippy kind of guy that didn't really fit in with the normal counselors at this place. You know what I mean? So he
really appreciated that that we wanted to play music, so he would take the time out on his on his downtime to take us to the auditorium so we could rehearse.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
Was really, really like supportive, and he kind of took us under his wing a bit. And
That's cool.
He even did a piano duet with me. He taught me a song that he had called "Did It End." It was this real cheesy romantic song that I sang a cappella with him at the end of our set. But before that, when we started the set, we were more, you know, rock and roll. And since that time, we had added a second guitar player who's now a cop in San Francisco named Bill Conley.
Lieutenant Bill Conley.
Yeah, that's what it was. Bill Conley was on drums in the 4-piece. Joe for the 5-piece because Bill wanted to change to guitar. Now I remember. Anyway, ironically, Joe went to jail for a long time. Bill became a cop. 2 separate paths. That's another story. So basically, we had this opening song that Ricky Sandoval played, this mellow, you know, we were all into Scorpions, Worldwide Live.
The song was called Breakup.
Yeah, Mike used to always play Worldwide Live like every day. Mike just used to do Klaus Meine impressions, Klaus Meine stage banter all day long in the cottage. I just remember him doing all the banter from Worldwide Live as we'd be walking around the cottage. So we had this song. We had a song called Breakup, but the song that we opened with was a song called Hard to Hold. Okay, really, really, really cheeseball lyrics.
That's what it was. Yeah, Hard to Hold.
We were 11, 12 years old. So, but it was cool because Ricky did this kind of Scorpions kind of ballad intro, and I just kept singing this over and over. You know, you're too hard to hold, something like that. And then we kick in. It gets heavy, right? So the whole band comes in and you know, big guitars, you know, dual guitar attack, right? And so I'll never forget this because my friend Rick Zettner told me the story because he was sitting right by the nuns when we did this. The plan was, I'm pushing a broom on stage, I'm singing this ballady line over and over, like I'm sad, you know.
But you remember, you started off sitting in the chair, pushing the broom like you were the janitor.
Exactly.
And you were devastated by the girl.
Yeah.
And mind you, this whole plot was set up by our counselor, Mr. Flynn. Like, he came up with the idea. He was like, you guys should do this.
This was Flynn all the way. He wanted to piss people off. He was kind of us. So the plan was the folding chair was right near the nuns were. So when the band kicks in, the plan was I was with my back to the chair to kick the chair off the stage right down where the nuns are when the song starts heavy. And apparently we timed it perfectly because
it was beautiful.
And the nuns just, Rick Zettner, my friend, said, because the nuns were like thinking it was really nice, right? I was singing this mellow thing. They're all, oh, this isn't so bad. You know, this is nothing to be worried about. It's just mellow. And so when we kick it into high gear, the chair flying at the nuns. And then, yeah, I would imagine the rest of the thing, they were just, they were pretty flabbergasted. It would be a good word to
That's
use.
And then
hilarious.
shortly after our debut appearance at Hanna Boys Center, the nuns took my Ozzy Osbourne, my AC/DC, and a couple other tapes of mine and sent them home because I was worshiping the devil.
Oh yeah, I think they put an end to live concerts. That was a one-time deal. After that, they brought the hammer down. There was no more of that. You know what's funny is I used to go visit Hanna's a lot later on in life, you know, and check in with everyone. And we had this really cool guy that worked in the cafeteria named Jeff. And I loved him to death. He was one of my favorite people there, and he was there for years after, you know. And I popped in.
He was a professional fast pitch softball dude.
He was amazing. Yeah,
That dude was badass. Could throw underhanded 102 miles an hour.
Yeah, he was He was always nice to all of us too. And he told me, I popped in, and this was like the late '90s, and I'm like, hey man. He's all, you're way worse than when you guys were here. He said, you know that band Corrosion of Conformity? He's all, that's what it is. He's all, Corrosion of Conformity. It's insane. But, you know, it was those types of places, you know, kind of spawned rebellion, and we were caught up in all of that. And
I love it.
It was a special time then because it was, you know, it was the height of MTV. It was the height of 80s, you know, rock, and of course the height of 80s football. Mike being a Raiders fan, me being a Niners fan. I mean, our teams won 4 out of 5 Super Bowls leading up, right? I think the Raiders won in '80, we won '81, and then there were I remember that Raiders won, and then we won in '95 in January. So it was a fun time to be a kid.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
I love it. I love it. Oh, so I know you guys were talking about footage. You guys were so funny. It's like someone must have footage. Some parents. It's like you guys were 12, and
there is
you'll
footage.
have to find it somewhere.
One of the kids every now and then it gets posted on the Hanna Facebook page. One of the kids' dads videotaped it. So in that day, it's like high 8 or something that it's on.
We gotta rope him into it on
that it was on there.
That's hysterical.
But one of these days we'll figure out. We'll hunt him down and we'll get a copy of it because I definitely would love to see it.
Or at least if he gets.
Story.
I'm also connected to teacher Ted.
Who?
Dude, I know it's been.
Ted, yeah.
Mike and I work at the Warfield together, right? So
besides that,
yeah,
his bandmates, you know, John Minor was in DRI, who I guitar teched and tour managed with for years, and his drummer Paul Jarvis Hopkins, I was a tour manager and lighting director for Skin Lab for eons. So it's 6 degrees of separation going on here.
Yeah,
yeah, less than 6 for sure.
Yeah, the Bay Area scene is so incestuous. It's just amazing. It's just it really is. I mean, it's San Francisco's a smaller town than people realize, and Oakland. It's a very tight knit community, and it's just funny. Everybody does know everybody. I mean, everyone that I know, even like guys like Jonathan Fenno, like everybody knows everybody. You know, it's like, oh, Mike, you know, Mike Murphy, him and I were in Hanna's together. Like everyone, they know Mike. You know, Mike just knows everybody. It's It's just fun to see all the time in the Bay. It's LA. It's a little bit more spread out, and it's not quite like that. But the Bay is very tight knit.
Yes.
Well, we've always been a family up here. Versus, I mean, the thing with the LA scene is, like you said, it's all spread out, and it's always been set up by, you know, where you were, what part of LA you were from. If you're Venice Beach, like Excel and all those dudes, they all hung out together. And Suicidal, those are all homies. Hollywood scene had its own crew. You know, and it's like in the Bay Area, it didn't really matter if you were thrash metal, even the glam dudes. We knew all the dudes in Vane were always friends with. You know, I worked for Death Angel for years. They were all at all the Death Angel shows. You'd see Davey Vane at Forbidden shows. You know, and vice versa. We all knew each other. I mean, come on, Mark, you wrote for a magazine and you supported all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was funny because when I reconnected with Mike. Walter Morgan and his whole crew who did the benefit, what was it, Thrush of the Cretans.
Yep.
So we got like Mike on and Sue and just everyone talking about, the behind the scenes of that gig, that phenomenal gig. So that was how I reconnected with Mike. And then Mike's, I mean, you live pretty close by and stuff. And it was so funny. I'm like, wait, I still have that orange sick-minded, pristine condition. So I showed it to Mike. He's like, I can't believe you have it. I'm like, do you want to give this to your son or daughter?
No, that's yours.
Thank you. So let's roll it back a little bit. Hey, Jon, I want to play your video with Mark, if that's okay, and share it with.
Yeah. Like I said, it was just it's not really an album quality track, but we had a lot of fun with it, and I think it turned out pretty cool. Most of the fans dig it.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's great. So.
Zombie apocalypse, a man-made metropolis.
Hell yeah.
Heavy.
Really cool.
Old school. try try to keep the melodic elements, you know. And Mark's a great singer. He's just, you know, he's real talented, and he brings that element. It's just that good times in metal. You know, that was always my goal when I started White Wizzard. Was metal got so gray for a while. You know, it was just a little too heavy. I loved all the thrash stuff back in the day because all those bands were still influenced by you know, all the good stuff. I mean, those guys grew up on all the 70s rock and 60s. I mean, you could sit down and talk to any of the guys in the classic thrash bands, and you know, they're influenced by all that shit, UFO and Rush, and you know, just so much different music from back then, to where I feel like that there's still a lot of that cool melodic element to the thrash from back then, and then metal started skewing into some directions that just lost my interest personally. So I don't know. It's funny. I don't listen to much metal anymore, but mostly it's Maiden, Priest, Scorpions, Queensryche, you know, Sabbath, Dio. I still listen to that all the time. And that's still kind of my main love. I love all that stuff. So that's probably why I've always just kind of channeled the filter of White Wizzard to kind of be through that feeling, you know,
Hmm.
because that's just the stuff I really dig. It's my passion, you know.
Yeah, no, like I said, I wasn't very familiar, but I was trying to catch up, you know, because I knew you'd be on here, and really enjoyed it. I think we were chatting the other day, saying I was telling you I was listening to ZZ Top, so I was starting to listen to ZZ Top. I'm like, wait, no, wait, I have other things to do. So I started listening to, I think I heard the first album, and then I listened to Devil's Cut after the first album, and I really enjoyed that. What was the part? I mean, that was yeah, actually, they're all really strong, but in that one, I really enjoyed like that three, like the tracks, like Kings of the Highway, Lightning in My Hands, and Steal Your Mind. Like those three just spoke to me. So I was walking a little faster, like uphill. It's like I really
Yeah,
enjoyed it. Just the whole tone
my
and your
favorite.
bass and that Steal Your Mind. I really enjoyed that.
Thanks. Yeah, that 1-2 punch of Kings and Lightning in My Hand. I was always pretty bitter at the label because we kind of were at the end of our run with them, and they weren't really. They'd signed Rival Sons, and they were putting a lot of money into other stuff, and they really weren't giving us the budget they did before. And I always felt like songs deserved video, either of them. And I had one really killer that was written for Kings of the Highway, and it just never got done, unfortunately. And in this day and age, without videos, it's just, you know what I mean? You need a push and you need video. And on that album, I was real proud of it. And I think the lineup was really strong. But we eventually imploded because we just didn't have enough push behind us. There wasn't enough money. You know, when there's not enough money, there's a lot of stress. And it's hard for bands to keep fighting the fight. You know, back in the day when profits were large, you know, bands got a lot of money put behind them. That's why they were able to have such a great ride, because there was profit to be made. There was tangible product. But these days, it's record labels are outposts, and there's not a lot of profit in the tangible aspect of music anymore. So that's why sampled music is so king right now, because it's the cheapest to make. They can turn a profit and throw a bunch of sampled stuff out there and turn small profits. But putting a band in a studio and, you know, making a full-on killer record like the ones we're all influenced by, that costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of time. No one can turn profits. That's why Donald Fagen from Steely Dan said he's not making records anymore, because it's not a financially sound investment for him, because at the level he wants to make a record and the time it takes, he'll never make any of his money back. He'll just be losing money like crazy. It's a different time now, so I'm just trying to keep a little of that spirit alive, you know,
But see, that's exactly why the home studio is king these days. I mean, so many people are recording at home. I mean, it's just so much easier to sit at home and track everything digitally yourself and have your other band members send your stuff in and put it together, because all it is it's your time versus going into a studio. And the reality is, with Pro Tools, you can do exactly what you're doing at home as you would do at Fantasy Studios.
Well,
They have
and
much
it's
about it. You know,
Well, it's
you
funny
don't
that you
need
say
to have
that.
a 48 channel board
Yeah.
in front of you. You can do your laptop's a 48 channel board.
Yeah, no, Michael, you're entirely right. I mean, you know, KMFDM has been doing that for
eons.
20, 30 years almost now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe since after Wax Tracks, and then when they went to, what was it, TVT Records, you know, or maybe when they went MDFMK, so that transition,
Sure.
you know, I think they were sending tapes back and forth, and you know, it's like they were digitizing, but I absolutely feel for everyone that's in the industry that's, you know, that's suffering like that, dude. It's got to be fucking rough, you know. And it's like, what do you do?
Yeah.
That was
Yeah, it's true.
So John, what were you saying? You were working on some Iron Maiden cover thing, and then you said you were doing some solo stuff. So what's going on right now with you?
So I just finished mixing a cover of Flight of Icarus off Peace of Mind. We're gonna throw that out next week. That's with a guy named Mikey Gremio. He actually toured with us a lot because our studio singer Wyatt Anderson used to pull out of tours last minute for various ridiculous reasons, and he'd save our butts last minute. He was really fantastic back then, and great singer. He was in a band called Cellador that Metal Blade did a big push with in 2006, 2007. And he's most known for that, but a very, very great singer. He actually has an outlaw country project he does in the Midwest now, and I still love singing metal. And I told him, hey, you know, everyone's always wanted us to do something with him because he never was actually on a record, even though he's probably sang more shows with us than all the other singers combined. He did all of our big. So I said, why don't we do a Maiden cover? You know, maybe we'll do an original too. We probably will, but I've got a bunch of stuff written. But we just kind of put it together and I mixed it. And I think I got it sounding really authentic. But at the same time, Mike put his own spin on it. I did all the backing vocals in the chorus. And it's fun. It's just, you know, something to do for fun while we're suffering through COVID. And also I spent what you guys just talked about. I spent a lot of the last few months honing my engineering skills. I've got all the UAD plugins, a lot of them, and Pro Tools, and you know, all the good old school stuff. And I've really been learning and refining my own production skills because we've spent a lot of money with our producer. He's great, but you know, doing a record for 10 grand in our genre with the record sales where they are now is it's unfeasible. And we could go on and try and do a Kickstarter and raise that money, but my guitarist and I have kind of gotten to a point where, like, you know, these days you're better off spending that money on a publicist and on merchandise and other avenues to get yourself out there and be an independent artist and try to, you know, monetize your art. And if you can produce your own stuff, you can put out a lot more material. You know, when you're dependent on a producer and money, you're doing an album every 3-4 years, but you could do 2 albums a year when you're doing stuff yourself. And that's kind of our goal, is to slowly build, you know, and monetize in that direction and really eventually be free of labels entirely and just kind of just continue to put material out on a consistent basis and just slowly kind of build a little bubble where everybody can at least make a little money. I mean, anybody that knows anything about this industry, if it's been on the inside of it, most of the bands you know about that aren't huge bands from back in the day, they're lucky if they come home from a tour with in their pocket, maybe $500, $1,000 each. You can't have a house, an apartment, a car payment. You can't live a life on that. So it's really, really difficult. Most musicians have to have a lot of other pans in the fire, a lot of other business things they're doing just to, you know, pay rent and do that. So it's a labor of love anyway. You kind of have to be a lifer to be doing this, or kind of crazy to be into your 40s. You really do. It's one thing if you're 18, but when you're in your 30s and 40s, you have true life stuff you're dealing with. So it's challenging. So self-production, as you guys were talking about, is one way for bands to become more self-sufficient. All the producers don't like that, including mine. He's, always it's everybody's trying to make a dollar in this industry. And a lot of the producers that used to make 10, 20 grand a record, of course, their egos are a little bit threatened by that. And at the same time, the bands just have to accept the reality, though. I just don't see how you can even justify spending that kind of money doing a record unless it's some investor that just has money to burn. But if you're, as a band, on a budget, Self-production is the future, and it's really the only way you can make any kind of profit margins off of your music down the road. By lots of material, and eventually self-video as well. I think video is important, and you kind of got to learn how to be your own with GoPros and iPhone cameras and editing software. You got to start learning how to be your own video people too. And eventually you can probably, if you have something good and a little bit of the right PR, you know, you got to hire somebody to do that kind of stuff for you, or a good manager. You could probably make some money in this industry, but don't have any delusions of grandeur. It's going to be Motley Crue 1985 money.
Those
Yeah,
days
no,
are
you're
long gone.
yeah, you're absolutely right about that, and I'm looking forward to that Maiden cover, because in the early, like that first album, I could definitely tell, you know, that they were an influence, and I really enjoyed your cover of Heading Out to the Highway, the Priest cover. That was really well done.
Oh, thanks. That
It was really
was done.
fun.
That was done in the Buddy's studio on Cakewalk. You know, it was like, it's funny because we did the Over the Top record, you know, spent like 10 grand on that with our producer, you know, and all that. And then we needed the label wanted a couple covers. So we knew this guy that had like Cakewalk over it. He has some office that he sells chairs out of the back of in Burbank. And he's like, I'll track them for you. So we set up some SM57 mics and just, you know, just tracked it on the fly, and it ends up being, you know, some B-sides for Over the Top, and cost us nothing. And you know, I guess it still comes down to performance. If you have a good band, you can record anywhere, and it'll still turn out decent, right? People always mention that cover, and I'm like, yeah, that was done like literally in the most rinky-dink, cheap software, you know, the whole deal, mics, everything. But we just, that lineup was rocking, and we laid it down. It turned out good.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, no, I have to catch up. I skipped the second one by accident, and I was kind of rushing, but yeah, but looking forward to checking out those other albums that you have.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch. I'll send you a link to the Maiden cover next week when it's out. We'll definitely do this again at some point.
Yeah,
And,
please. Yeah,
you
thank
know,
you.
having me on. I got to cut to a different thing, Mike. It's killer seeing you. We'll
Thank you.
I'm sure there's other stories we could tell another time, but
Yeah, thanks for your time. It's
nothing
Hey,
but good memories.
glad to be here.
It was a good